I think that the main obstacle to reaching higher in any area is, for me, the human ego. I think we have come on this planet to discover what it means to live in a material environment and to overcome the ego. At least for me, that is my main aim on my spiritual path. There's a little prayer I composed many, many years ago, which I repeat almost daily, which for me is really the ultimate aim of my spiritual striving. Shine as me, and may I be so thee, that all those I encounter may experience me as thy radiant presence, thy unconditional love and forgiveness. May they no longer see me, but only thee. And very often I start simply by saying, thank you for shining as me, which eliminates any residue of dualism that could introduce itself into this prayer. So that is what I see as my goal, and blessing is a very helpful tool for eradicating the ego, because if you develop the practice of constant blessing, then it forcibly, necessarily takes you out of yourself and enables you to enfold all those around you in love without judgment. I'd like to share a little experience I had recently in this field. I received a phone call sometimes last spring from a gentleman with a strong foreign accent saying that he was phoning from the Apple Windows office in London, which I learned doesn't exist even, and that I had problems with my with my computer. And things happened then very fast. Suddenly, he was moving around on my screen with his mouse, so evidently my webmaster told me I must have somehow allowed him to get onto my computer. And then for the next half hour he talked about what should be corrected, that he was making this correction, that correction. And after 25-30 minutes I started having a deep feeling of unease. I felt something was really not right. And suddenly he asked me for something like, I think it was $165 or $175, and I said we never spoke about any payment. And then he said, of course, that everything nowadays nothing is free, you have to pay for all services, and this was a professional service. And I found myself in a very difficult position. I thought, if I refuse to pay, he can mess up my whole computer. And later, when I had my computer cleaned up by my webmaster, he told me this gentleman had left elements, sleepers in my computer that would have enabled him to continue controlling my computer. So I paid up and we concluded our conversation. And I immediately phoned my webmaster who told me, Pierre, you've been victim of trickery, and you should immediately cut your internet connection and immediately cancel your bank card, which I did. But all in all, with changing my whole system, cleaning it up, it cost me close to $500. And I can say, the minute I realized, after talking to my webmaster, that I had been completely and totally tricked, my first thought was one of deep compassion for this man. I didn't feel any anger towards him. I felt a moment of irritation with myself for having been tricked so easily. But that disappeared too, especially when I phoned the center for where they cancel all bank cards. And the professional there told me he'd been victim of exactly the same trickery. So I immediately felt the deepest compassion for this man, because I thought, how sad to spend your whole life tricking people from morning till night. He can never know happiness as long as he stays in this state of mind. And for weeks after that event, I continued blessing this man, blessing him in his integrity, in his sense of rightness and justice, and other similar qualities. And for me it was a very, very enriching experience. And today I can say I'm deeply, deeply grateful. The $500 are nothing compared to all I learned through this experience. And again, the power of blessing to heal always. Certainly I was instantaneously healed, and I can't help thinking that my blessings will help him along his way too. So that was a very powerful experience. It's now almost 30 years since I've been blessing people, and two of the most memorable aspects of this practice for me is, first of all, it's created in me an instantaneous empathy with anybody suffering. I cannot see anyone suffering without instantaneously and immediately sending them blessings. If I see someone in deep depression, I will bless them in their serenity, in their joy, in their peace. And sometimes it can last weeks. I remember a woman I met on the bus 2 or 3 years ago in Geneva, and for at least 6 months I regularly continued blessing this woman. If I see someone who's drunk and yelling, I bless them in their peace, in their serenity, in their deep inner contentment, etc. So that's the first element that I think is very important. Blessing develops in you an immense capacity to empathize with the suffering of anyone and everyone. And this includes, of course, animals and nature, not only human beings. And another important aspect of blessing in my life has been that I feel the most tremendous desire for the happiness of every single person on this planet. I think it's one of my deepest desires is that everyone, and this includes politicians like President Assad of Syria, who's driving his country to the ground, pedophiles, child rapists, mafia gangsters, politicians, you name them. I just have the deepest, deepest desire for the happiness of everyone, because ultimately my neighbor is myself. There's an old Aramaic version. Aramaic was the language Jesus spoke, which of the second commandment, which instead of saying love your neighbor as yourself, says love your neighbor who is yourself. And this tiny change I discovered a few years ago has been one of the hugest spiritual revolutions in my life. Because to really see your neighbor as yourself demands such a lot. And it makes me realize how far I still am from really loving, because I'm still far from really seeing everyone as myself. So that's a precious lesson I'm learning through the practice of blessing.